Guess what? They are. Hollywood is in big financial trouble. And the more woke they get, the bigger troubles, bigger problems they're going to have. Because people go to Hollywood, people go to movies for escapism. They don't watch movies to be preached to. That's why you go to your parents' house on Sunday. That's why you go to church, okay? That's why you sit in the boss's office to be preached to be told what to do, okay? Not in your free time. And that's just a fact. If you think that's racist, if you think that's me believing there's a lack of diversity, if you think that's me being unfair, let me know, and we'll have that discussion. Now, number 3, and this is going to get me in trouble too, is baseball. But before we get into baseball, let me just go back. Remember when Mel Gibson got into a bunch of trouble when he said in a drunken stupor that the Jews run Hollywood? Let me tell you 2 things about what Mel Gibson said. First of all, he was drunk and he was totally wrong to make a statement like that. That was a racist statement. But the numbers are what they are and the facts are what they are. If you look at who's in charge in Hollywood, who runs the show, and the percentage of people in Hollywood who are in charge and run the show compared to the number of Jews in this country, to say that they're overrepresented, and I'll use that term, to say that they're overrepresented is the understatement of the year. Now, that's not to say that it's not a good thing. It doesn't matter what your religion or national origin is. If you can do a good job, you can do a good job, okay? And the fact that there are a disproportionate amount of Jews in Hollywood is just a fact. But then when you say, why, you're being discriminatory against the Jews. Friends, that's just like saying the NBA is being discriminatory against blacks. By the way, people have said that, but that's another story for another day. Let's get into number 3, Major League Baseball. For about 20 years now, there's a mantra going about Major League Baseball about blacks being underrepresented in baseball. What does that mean? I don't even know what that means, okay? What they say that means is when you compare it to, say, the 1980s, there's a whole lot less blacks in baseball than there were then, okay? Now, I've ran some numbers, and that statement is kind of true, but the numbers show that statement is kind of true, but I don't know what those numbers really mean. And here's what I mean by that. In 1981, that was the year that there were more African Americans represented in Major League Baseball than any other time. Almost 19% of all Major League Baseball players were African American. Almost 19%. Today, 2016, because that's the latest date I could find the numbers. 6.7%. That, my friend, is a huge drop. It's a tremendous drop. Okay? Huge drop. From 1981 to 2016. Almost 18.7% to 6.7%. That's a, 12% drop? My math right? Yeah, 12% drop. That's a big deal. So what does that mean? What does that mean exactly? Does that mean that baseball is racist? Some say it is. African Americans are underrepresented in Major League Baseball. Okay, when you say underrepresented, when you say there's racism, when you say there's no lack of diversity, what does that really mean? What that really means is there's too many white faces. Let's be honest. That's what that means, okay? Or is it? Baseball, football, basketball, hockey, in fact, I would say all professional sports are probably the most, what's the term I want to use? Non-racist organization, because truly, very truly, the best players make it because the goal is to win. And if you can win with this player who's happens to be a certain race, color, creed, whatever, you're going to get that player. That's just the way it works. Okay. So let's say, okay, there's no diversity in baseball. Baseball's terrible. It's less diverse than it used to be. It depends on who you talk to and what lens you're looking at. So let's go back to that year, 1981, where more African Americans were in baseball than ever before. Now, you notice I didn't use the term black. I used the term African American because that's the term that's always used. And I think it's used on purpose, and I'll get into that in just a moment. So 1981, 18.7% of baseball players in the MLB were African American. 70.1% were white. So let's go to today. Where are we today? Let's see here. Quick. Here. Okay. 2016, 6.7% of all players in Major League Baseball are African American. And 63.7% are white. So from 1981 to 2016, there are 12% less players who were African American in Major League Baseball. White players, it went from 70.1% in 1981 to 60.7% in 2016. What? Yeah. So that's a 7%, 6.5% decrease in the number of white players. So you think to yourself, well, wait a minute. If there's less black players and less white players, who's taking up all the slack? In 1981, 11% of all players in Major League Baseball were Latino. 0% were Asian. 2016, 27.4% of all players in Major League Baseball were Latino. 2.1% Asian. So is it a fact that there's less African Americans in Major League Baseball today than was in 2081? Yes. There's less white ones too, but there's a whole lot more Latinos, 16% more, and 2% more Asians. Asians used to be 0. Now they're over 2%. So how can you say Major League Baseball is less diverse than it used to be? So if you use the term it's less diverse, that's not true at all. It's more diverse than it's ever been. But that's not what but the people who say that baseball is less diverse don't really mean that. They mean that there's less African Americans. And for some reason, that's important. Now, I mentioned before that I'm using the term African Americans, not black, because that's the term that wants to be used. I've heard in more than one interview, why? So-and-so is not African American. He's Latin. Okay, well, he's from the Dominican Republic, and if you look at him, he looks black to me. But his name is Pedro Sanchez, and he has black skin, but that doesn't mean he's black. Okay, help me understand that. Why does that even matter? But that's the term that's used. Latin American players can be light-skinned, dark-skinned, something in between. They're just from someplace else. They're just Latin American players. And by the way, I guess Yadier Molina would be a Latin American player, even though he was born in Puerto Rico, which is part of the United States. Okay, Keith Hernandez, was he a Latin player? Look at his name, Keith Hernandez. He didn't speak a word of Spanish. Okay, still doesn't, as far as I know. I know he didn't when he played with the Cardinals because Jack Buck tried to interview him in Spanish. He says, "Well, what are you doing, man? I don't speak Spanish. I was born in this country." So when you talk about diversity in sports, especially in Major League Baseball, and you say Major League Baseball is racist because there's less African American players today than there were in 1981, don't tell that to the Latin American players or the Asian players, because they are now represented more than ever before. So what does it really mean? Does it mean that Major League Baseball is racist? That they're not fair? That they're discriminating against African Americans? Or maybe it just means, there's a lot of real good Latin players out there. And all the Major League teams just have a 26-man roster. So maybe, just maybe, there's less white ones and less African American ones because Latino and Latins are just better. That doesn't mean that Latino or Latin players are better sports celebrities or better athletes. It just means that they can hit a ball farther or throw it harder. That's all it means. And that's the whole diversity thing. That's where it loses me. Because if you say only a Jew can play a Jew in the movies, if you say the Hollywood Foreign Press Corps has to have so many people on their board, and then when they do that, they say, you're just playing to the crowd. And when you say that Major League Baseball is more diverse than ever before, but there's less African Americans, so it's racist, friends, you've lost me. You've totally lost me when you start talking that way. Because in the opinion of the strongman, and I will argue this with anybody, my opinion is when you go down that path and start pointing your fingers in this direction, friends, dear listeners, that's about the most racist thing you can possibly say. Well, that's it. I'm done. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address you can send me. You can send me an instant message on Facebook. Do whatever you like. But if you don't agree with what I'm saying, again, let me know. And if you make a good argument, I'll even have you on the show to have a good discussion. That's just how I roll. That's it. We're done. Hey, have a good weekend. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.